So, welcome everyone. My name is Katya Syromyatnikova. I'm the VP of Global Customer Success at Intento. And today, talking to us about how you can shift from being a single function localization expert into being a strategic advisor to your executive team. Joining us is Hilary Atkisson Normanha, the Senior Product Manager for Localization and Internationalization. So, Hilary, can you share a couple of words about yourself and your role at Spotify?
Yeah, so I am Hillary. I think I've probably met a lot of you guys who are joining the call. If not, I'd love to meet you sometime in the future. I've been in the industry a long time. I think many of us have, and I started on the seller side as a linguist many, many years ago in Brazil, actually. And then I've worked my way through a variety of roles. I've been really lucky to work at a lot of different companies, from like really small startups to medium-sized tech and really big tech too. And now I'm at Spotify, and I actually am a product manager at Spotify. I've been a product manager for, I should have looked before this call, but I think like a year and a half. Um, and I'm building multilingual systems with a heavy emphasis on AI at Spotify right now.
This is so exciting. And before we dig a little bit deeper into your role, uh, colleagues here are reminding me that I am supposed to inform our guests that this webinar is being recorded, that the recording will be sent to you as a follow-up to this webinar. And also, if you have any sort of questions that you would like to ask Hilary, there is a Q&A button right in the bottom of your screen. So you can post your questions there. If they are relevant to something that we're talking about right now, I might read out this question in the process. If they are more of the general questions, then we will have a little bit of time for Q&A in the end. And now that I have gotten the housekeeping items out of the way, let's talk a little bit about your role. So, product manager in localization, this is not the type of role you would usually expect in localization. So, could you tell me a little bit more about what this role entails and how is it different from the more well-known roles such as localization manager or program manager?
Yeah, so I think we all know that there's been just this like explosion of multilingual content that's been happening in our industry because of AI. Even before, I mean, machine translation essentially is AI, but from the machine translation on, and then in recent years, it's really exploded. Um, and a lot of us have been working with systems that are being offered to us by our technical partners in our companies, but that we don't really have a hand in building. We don't have an ability to influence how those systems are built. When we're the primary stakeholders, we're the ones that are maybe either using them the most or having to deal with their outputs downstream. And so, this role that I have at Spotify is kind of grown out of this need for a person to bridge the gap between the localization team and, as a by proxy, like the international users, and the more technical side of the business that is maybe building content and systems that need to interface and work with the localization team. Hopefully that answers your question.
This absolutely answers my question, and this is amazing. What I love about this is essentially, as a part of localization team, you had a problem, which is this gap between the technology and the actual localization specialists. And what I'm hearing is that essentially you went there and invented your own role and then persuaded the teams, the executive team, that this role needs to exist. So, how did you manage this? This is the level of influence that I think a lot of us here can really dream of.
Yeah, I mean, you're being very kind with your words, but I did have a little help. But yes, we did create this role. So my director, Tommaso Rossi, who is fantastic, by the way, at Spotify, and myself, we created a business case for this role and the need for the role within what we were experiencing at Spotify. So, like I mentioned before, um, I think a lot of companies have a business case for this because we're experiencing this kind of like infinite production of content that's coming our way. But we don't have a layer of governance that can ensure like consistent tone, brand protection, uh, cultural fit, glossary, style guides, all of those things. And so I think a lot of you on the call could create a really strong business case around why you need to be involved in product development, especially any product development that's related to AI, because it is a clear business case. We have this fragmentation of the way content is being created and who owns like this governance layer within sits like safety, tone. I mean, we know AI does things like when you ask it to translate into Spanish, even like Spanish LATAM, you're going to see maybe a huge variety of versions of Spanish in the output. So who owns that? Who's in charge of the quality of that? If every team is just connecting to a different LLM, right? So the first step is creating a business case. And a lot of this information I just mentioned could go in there. And then I think what's really important, like a lot of us in localization, we see needs for us to be involved with engineering teams with different efforts, but the language that we're speaking is not the language that they're speaking, and so we're saying things that I just said, like glossaries and tone and all of this stuff, and they're like, "We don't know what you're talking about. That's not important to us." So I think when you're trying to make a strategic move like this or create a role or a division within your org, it's very important to understand what the stakeholder cares about, what that person cares about, what their pain points are, and speak their language. And we can talk more about that later if you want. And then within that, it's really important within your business case, you need to have a common language, a common pain points. And you also need to include metrics, especially in this day and age. Metrics are important. I know we've been talking about it for a long time in our industry, but it is really important. And it's important to not just throw at them things that we care about, like word volumes, or like quality metrics, because those might not speak to them. You need to identify metrics that that stakeholder, the person who is able to help influence this decision, metrics that they really care about. That's key. And I'll pause. I don't just want to lecture.
Absolutely. That's the lecture that we all can deserve and should listen to. Think. So just to quickly summarize, we absolutely need a business case, and I think this is relevant for more cases than just justifying a specific role. This can also
Yep.
be about speaking about proving that a certain project needs to happen, that a certain software needs to be implemented, that a certain strategy
Yep.
needs to be approached. In every case, you will need a business case, which is based on a common problem that you have together with the stakeholders, speaking the common language with them. I personally always prefer to say that the most common language you can get with any executive team is money. Whatever you can translate
Yes.
into and savings or opportunity to
Yes.
bring in more revenue for the company is a winning strategy. And then you are saying something that's extremely important for me, but also from my experience is one of the most challenging things. So we do want to show the metrics to our stakeholders. If we're working with a
Mm,
community, want to show how localization, better language quality helps with user engagement. If we're working with marketing, we want to show how better localization is transforming into more leads in this region or better
hmm
customer experience. What we often see when we are working with our customers and we as the customer success function are discussing, okay, how would you like to present the results of this implementation to your management? How would you like to show the business impact? We very often see that no metrics are perfect. It can be very difficult to actually get the numbers from the other department, like from marketing
mm,
But even if, let's say, we have a really good relationship and they provide us with all the numbers, how can you prove that it is actually the introduction of a better linguistic quality, better localization that has resulted in increased views, increased engagement, increased improved customer experience? What I often hear,
Hmm.
we cannot precisely prove this correlation or this causation. So what would be your recommendation here?
I love that you bring this up because I actually get asked this all the time. And even when I have tried to coach people, and I have coached people in the past to help them create business cases, this is like a wall we always run into. And the first thing I want to say is that perfectionism is getting in our way as an industry. Like it's really getting in our way. We are, a lot of us, including myself, were really cool nerds when we were younger. The cool is a maybe for me, but I was a major nerd. I wanted that A in school. It was important to me that I got the answers right. The small details really mattered. And that's what's made us like so great at our jobs in a lot of ways, especially people who are coming from a linguistic background. You're seeing a level of detail and you notice things. And that has what has propelled you forward until this moment is your precision and your ability to like really zoom in on details, break down a process into small parts. And that's why you've succeeded. But it is not going to get you over this hump. This specific problem requires like being okay with something being imperfect. And I know that that's a big struggle for people in our industry. So you do not have to have the perfect metric. You do have to have confidence when you're presenting your metrics. Um, because we know that our metrics move the needle. We know this. I think the key is the way you frame it and the way you talk about it to the executive. So I'm going to try and give a practical example because we're just like in the clouds right here. But I think so. One thing that I can think of in my specific use case right now is that showing how centralizing the work that we're doing saves engineering time. I don't have to get a specific metric. You know, I can go in and speak to some engineering managers and see like how much time does your team spend going back and forth with localization teams to like fix issues, get a few metrics, create a ballpark number, project, do a projection, and then say we're just going to save approximately X amount of engineering time by implementing this change, by centralizing this connector to LLMs, for example. Um, and that has a numeric value because developers and engineers are really expensive, and most companies care how much they're paying. I mean, you can usually, I know in the US, like the average pay for an engineer is like 200K a year. So you can really extrapolate some great numbers from that and how much you're saving the business if you're saving one engineer even like a small amount of time. So that's the logic that I'm encouraging you to follow, and it does not have to be perfect. You don't have to say how many minutes did your engineer spend on this. It doesn't have to be that level of perfection. Um, Another example that we can talk about, I think, is zooming in on examples that really matter to the stakeholder. So the stakeholder a lot of times is going to care about depending on your stakeholder. If you're dealing with like marketing managers in your company, um, they are going to care about like click-through rates, engagement rates, these kinds of things. So when you could, if you want, you could conduct a study with one of your vendors and show that users engage more with content that's linguistically accurate, right? And then you can show maybe they didn't engage with this content, they did engage with this, they spent more time on this content than that content, and you can present that, you can put it together in a pretty presentation and say, we have done research with our vendor showing that linguistically accurate marketing content increases engagement by 80%, right? Whatever the percentage number is. You don't have to go and find this data from around the company and put this like perfect, exact number to paper. And I will also tell you, the longer I've worked in these companies, I'm not speaking about Spotify. I can't and I shouldn't, but in broadly, the companies that I've worked at, a lot of people look at numbers like this. I think because we were the perfect students, we are really taking seriously what people present in these presentations. But you need to sell what you're doing, and you don't have to have a perfect, I'm not saying make up numbers, definitely not, but you don't have to have the perfect, exact, I converted 12 users when I changed this word in the translation. That's not what your stakeholder wants. That's not the language they're used to seeing. That's not how other people present things to them to sell them on an idea or a new step in a flow. And you don't need to meet that level of perfection.
Love it. And this very much confirms what are my feelings and what I'm seeing from working with executives specifically. When you're talking
Yeah.
about extrapolation, about assumption, I think that this is absolutely in 100% how any executive would be working with the numbers. Because for any executive, your role is to be able to plan ahead. You cannot plan ahead only relying on very exact data because then your span of planning will not exceed 1 month. So the way
Yeah.
they're always talking is about if we assume that this particular action or this particular project will move this number by 10%, this will mean
Hmm.
X number of hours or X number of dollars saved. So your example with engineering, I believe this is exactly what you do. You say, let's assume that this project will realistically save us 10% of engineering time. And it can be much
Yeah.
more. Let's go with a conservative number. This 10%
Hmm.
is still 20K a year if we're talking about one engineer. And this is absolutely how we can
Exactly.
calculate it. And I love your thought about engaging the vendor. As somebody who is coming
Hmm.
from the vendor side, it's in
Yeah.
our vendor's best interest that you not only get the best value out of whichever product you're using with us, this is also in our interest that you can make it into a business case to your manager.
Hmm.
Why your vendor will be very happy to share whichever benchmarks, information from other customers, anonymized, obviously, whichever statistics
Hmm.
have, and they probably have a broader pool of statistics because they have the customers who are exactly like you. So, absolutely, don't be afraid to extrapolate. Don't be afraid to say out loud, here is our assumption. The only problem
Yeah.
with data, if you make an assumption or approximation, is if you don't say that it's an approximation. If you say it out loud, everybody
Yes.
will be happy with it. And engage with
Exactly.
the vendor. Ask who is your customer success manager with whichever software you're using to help you
Hmm.
for AI transformation with your translations, and they will be happy to help. They will be ecstatic that you're asking them. And from there, we're moving on a little bit. What I'm thinking about is we have already started talking quite a lot about how do we essentially increase our self-esteem as a professional, as a
Hmm. Hmm.
in order to be able to come in there and say, okay, my calculations are not perfect, but they're good. You need to be
Yeah.
confident you can have a seat at this table, that you can be comfortable with this. If I
Yes.
am a localization manager, or honestly anyone, if I don't feel right now like I have the seat at this table, like I should be
Mm.
comfortable into my executive stakeholders, what advice can you give me to shift this mentality and to actually find myself confident that I can do this and I can speak this language?
I love this question. I mean, there is no better time, I think, to be a language professional when it comes to having confidence about these things. I meet with people from across the sphere, but in my last 10 years, I've mostly worked with engineers and developers, project managers, CTOs, directors of product, these kinds of people. Um, and you would be surprised. I think a lot of the stuff that we know that we have a strong level of expertise in, maybe we assume other people know these things. Um, and I have had conversations with directors of product at massive tech companies, head of ML engineering, these kinds of people. And when I start talking to them about why the LLM isn't doing well in this language, or the fact that maybe most LLMs are trained on 70 to 90% English. That includes Claude, OpenAI, Gemini, all of the big names. They're shocked. We assume that they know these things, but they don't. So the first thing I think is to own your expertise. You have the expertise. You have the ability to really step into this moment, and this moment of linguistic transformation and expansion that's happening in the tech sphere. You are the expert on like plurals, gender in language. Placeholders, you know things about collation, like ordering of things. You know so much that these experts are seeking out that knowledge to try and train the systems that they're building because they don't have it and they don't know. And so you really have a great opportunity to position yourself as an expert within the linguistic sphere. Um, to do that, though, you need to be able to be okay with where the industry is going. And the industry is going in a more technical direction. And so there's like I think a reckoning for our industry where a lot of us are just pointing to the problems and we're not wanting to be part of the solution. And then we say, well, we weren't part of the solution and we're upset about it. And so I think there needs to be a mindset shift where you're like, okay, this is happening. I want to help shape it and make it work for the people that I care about in the world. I want to make sure that this technology that is going to be used works for people around the world, and doesn't harm them. And to do that, I have to be actively involved and I have to position myself as an expert. So you need to embrace that this is happening, position yourself as an expert, and know that you have the expertise. And then leverage that expertise and also lean into adjacent areas. Like we have taxonomy is going to grow, is growing already in this new era. It's very adjacent to localization. If you don't know what it is, go look it up. Spend some time thinking about it, include it in your business case. Um, Applying context to AI training. So this is like making sure that whenever AIs are translating, that they're able to pull in context, things like glossaries and um, style guides and that kind of stuff, which actually they're not very good at, and we need to figure out better solutions. There's even researchers trying to figure this out right now. There's papers being published like last month about how to solve this problem, and we weren't involved in those papers, and we should be. So there are really cool, interesting problems that people are trying to solve right now. And they need you. They need us to be like, hey, I can help you solve this problem. Let me help you solve this problem, and position yourself as an expert. So I think this confidence problem is in many ways it's in our heads, and we need to set that aside and really step into this moment and position ourselves as leaders in this space.
So what I'm hearing is essentially we in localization are some of the best equipped people to actually ride this wave of
Yes.
the technology. We have been doing AI way before the word AI became so commonplace because just as you mentioned in the beginning, NMT is essentially AI, and we have been
Yep.
doing it for years before
Yep.
OpenAI or Claude became a thing. And the challenge is, do all those other people, do these technical specialists in our company actually know that we are this treasure trove of the expertise? And it sounds like the answer is no.
Hmm.
They're not supposed to know this.
They
They should not
don't.
think about it.
No. This is like a position, there's a positioning problem, right? Because I think in a lot of companies, we have been positioned or we have positioned ourselves as a service desk. And so people just come to us because they need translations. And this is where there is risk that we could be pushed out in this new wave. And so that shifting that positioning is really important. Not just like for the survival of our work, but also for this new wave of technology to really meet the needs of the world. because we know the risks and the harm that will be caused if we don't position ourselves to advise and to help build and shape and like paint this new future for ourselves and for the world as well. So yeah, there's a positioning problem there, um, and we can help shift that narrative around our work.
Absolutely. And we actually do have a customer where a thing like this happened,
Mm,
and they're being extremely successful. So there is a large company which always used to have a really large localization department, which
hmm
was primarily consisting of in-house linguists. So they were doing translations or they were doing post-editing. And then, once the more advanced workflows that allow you to minimize the amount of post editing that is needed for any content, including the content you put in front of your customers, when it became obvious that these workflows are here, they can be leveraged. This particular team did not go the way that we unfortunately see in many cases, where they
mm,
are just upset about this and they hope that somehow it will not touch them. What they did instead is they refocused as a team on learning as much about AI technology in the localization industry as possible, learning how to
hmm
leverage this technology, and they transform themselves into the team which is specifically responsible for setting up and fine-tuning these workflows and
Yeah,
fine-tuning prompts for these workflows. And this
yeah,
did not result in their jobs becoming obsolete. This did not result in a situation where, okay, now AI can translate what before that could be translated by 10 people can be translated by one person. And so they do not, nine people out of this team are no longer needed. What happened is the very different thing. Now they can translate 10 times more content. And now they are
hmm
translating 10 times more content and they are putting it out there. If we look at the statistics, if we look at any companies, even very large companies, different touch points, let's say which languages their website is available in, which languages their support is available in, which languages their help center is available in.
yeah,
There is so much content that has never before been localized. And if we
yes,
look from this point of view, we can bring this huge impact as long as, again, we are ready and are able to build it into use case and to explain why actually
hmm
having all this content translated is something that can help us a lot. So, love what you're saying. I think this is exactly how it could help a lot of people right now to get proactive about their role and look
yeah,
into.
yeah.
How
There's infinite possibilities. There's truly infinite possibilities for our industry. And even just like not thinking about those types of content, but like metadata, there's so much content that if you start learning about what happens on the tech side, you're going to see that there's a plethora of content that's never been put in front of you as a localization person because it wasn't possible before. And so a lot of companies did things like they said, for example, years ago I worked at a small tech company and we had internal search enabled because we offered a whole bunch of different types of content on the websites and on the apps, and people needed to search for it. And at the time, machine translation, AI translation wasn't where it is today. And so for us to surface the content for users that they were searching for it, a lot of times we just had to like back translate. So whatever they searched, we would have to like back translate into English and then show them the results for the English content because it wasn't feasible. Now with machine translation, with AI translation, with AI post editing, with the ability to like do quality evaluations to train LLMs to do quality evaluations, you could potentially translate metadata into like hundreds of languages, which would be a huge offering for your business. So you could put together a business case, for example, on how to do something like this. You could bring it in front of um, someone on the product side and they would love you for it. They would be excited about it. You can't go tell them we're going to human translate uh, millions of pieces of content into hundreds of languages, but you can say, here's my suggestion. Here's how I would tier out the languages based on my expertise and my years in this industry. Here's the LLMs I would recommend for these language pairs. Here is how I think we should assess quality through sampling, all the kinds of stuff that we know so well in our industry that they don't know about. And so that's just a small example, but there are tons of these examples. So I would encourage you to like actually dig into what the tech teams are thinking about, how they're thinking about accessing more users, because they on their side, they're all excited too. They're like, wow, because they don't understand AI as well, but they're like, wow, we can like reach more people with our content. They're excited about this. So start a conversation with them. Like, what are you excited about? What are the things you are most excited to bring to our users, to our customers, etc. And then you go and think about with your expertise and their expertise, how could you like combine Power Rangers and produce something just fantastic and brilliant?
There must be an Avengers Assemble joke somewhere in here, but for the
I
love of
know
me,
there is.
not, I cannot see what it should
It's
be, but
there.
there must be one. One clarifying question you just mentioned and
Yeah.
got me really pumped about, okay, I should go and talk to my marketing people right now. I should go and talk to my technical teams right now. How do I start this conversation, especially if I work in a really large company? You are working in a large
Mm.
company right now.
Yeah.
The company is relatively smaller, and it's very easy for me to go and find these marketing people, these technical people, and talk to them. At Spotify, at Meta, at many other companies which are huge, how do you even start
Mm.
this?
That's a great question. I would say, um, make sure you're going through the proper channels. Like, I think that sometimes localization people are shut down because we're going to someone at the wrong level for this type of decision making. Um, I'm not saying don't go talk to the developer that you typically work with or the product manager that you typically work with. But this that I just mentioned to you, this proposal that I just came up with here about metadata, that's not something for maybe an individual product manager to champion. That's something that you want to go to someone higher up with it. You want to put together a solid business case and go to someone higher up with it and present it to them. This goes back to the confidence problem. You don't need to go to like the project manager that you normally work with or the localization, I don't know, your preferred partner in marketing. When you're trying to champion yourself as an expert, which you are, you need to go to the decision maker. You need to go to the proper person in the chain of command because you might just get shut down. I mean, think about if someone came to you in your role and was like, you know what, I feel like you could do something a little different. You might be like, cool, John, nice story. I have a lot of stuff to do. I'll look into it and just like never get back to them, right? Um, so you need to go to the person that is actually thinking strategically about the work. And that's probably going to be someone at a higher level. So maybe this means like bringing your proposal to your manager and saying, I want to strategically position this for our team. Who do you think is the best person for me to go to so that we can partner with marketing, with product? Just some like lobbying politics, I guess, pieces that you need to think about.
And it makes me think about the fact that you need a whole matrix for different stakeholders here. So even
Mm,
in this short answer that you gave me, which is quite short for the amount of work that needs to be done, um,
mm,
I would say that I identify at least three different stakeholders. You want to
mm.
go to this higher manager of a different function than yours. For that,
Yes.
you need two things. You need to be able to speak their language because they will not listen to you unless you open with something that's very clearly a problem they care about and the solution they can
Yes.
understand because it's put in the language they can understand. Where do you learn this? You probably learned this from this Johnny in marketing to whom you talk
Yeah.
day to day, with whom
Yeah.
you have your coffees or your cigarettes or however you interact with your colleagues to understand what does your department care about? What do you care
Hmm.
about, Johnny? Because this is probably cascading from something that their manager cares about. And this is how
Yeah.
you learn the language. So you need your peers in the other department. And then you just mentioned, in order to even get the foot in the door and start the conversation with the higher manager in this other department, you might need to leverage your manager. So we're having this whole matrix of different people who you need
Yes.
in order to position your business case properly. So probably in many cases, what might be happening to a lot of us is we try once with this new initiative when we're still excited, when we still see everything that AI has to offer us,
Hmm.
fail because we haven't put enough work in preparing this business case. This is where the
Yes.
perfectionism should channel into, not the numbers, but
Yes.
the construction of the business case altogether, because you
Yes.
just have one chance to make this first impression, and all the little details beyond what is written in your slide deck are what matters. So, yeah.
Something I've been totally agree. The presentation matters. The way you talk about it matters. The language you're speaking, it really matters. Two things I would add on here. First, um, I didn't mention it in my little intro at the beginning, but I took a break in my career from localization, and I lived in rural America for many years while I was caring for one of my parents. And during that time, I worked in supply chain. And when I was in supply chain, I learned a lot about something called Six Sigma. Six Sigma grows out of the manufacturing industry, and great lessons for us from the manufacturing industry, at least in the US, because they went through basically an automation of everything they did at the time, which is kind of what we're experiencing right now. This was back in 2005, 6, 7, 8, back then. Um, they experienced this and they had to lean into change management. They kind of like evolved this area of change management, and out of that grew something called Six Sigma. If you want, you can go look it up. But Six Sigma has evolved into many things. But at the time, we were using it to try and help manage this transition to automation, and manage it in a way that was successful, so that like in the end, the manufacturing and supply chain was more efficient, but still met all of the quality requirements that were important. Because a lot of times in manufacturing, I mean, we're talking about major safety issues that could result. There's a lot of mirroring of what happened then and what we're seeing now. But in Six Sigma, it's so important for you to align on the pain points, the key pain points that you're trying to fix. And you've probably heard about this. Like, I think this ideology has trickled through and made its way into general culture. This is really important. So, your marketing manager, what do they care about? Depending on what you're dealing with, for a lot of apps, it's like time spent in the app. Maybe it's conversions. Maybe it's new users. Maybe all they care about is acquiring new users. They have a metric that's really important to them. And if you can open, when you mentioned your opening, if you can open your pitch with saying, I want to help you blank, this thing that they care a lot about, immediately you're going to have their attention. And then you should structure your proposal around that, around how what you're proposing helps move this metric that's important to them. Another thing that I wanted to mention is increasingly I've been thinking about, and I'm probably new. I bet a lot of people have been doing this already. So you might be like, oh, whatever, Hillary, we've all been doing this. But increasingly, I've been thinking about what I build and my broader team. I'm not the director of Loc. I'm just like working on some little products, but our team as like a company inside a company. And so it's like we have our own little company and our customers are the other people inside the company. So it's like a microcosm. And if you think about it that way, like I am trying to onboard people onto my product, onto my tools that I'm selling them, which is my services, the value that I bring them, it should shift the way that you work with your stakeholders internally. It's like if you learn about marketing funnels, like you want to capture them at the top of the funnel, and then you like bring them further into the funnel. So at the top of the funnel, maybe the way you capture them and pull them in to work with you is by saying you can do machine translation for them. And that might seem really counterintuitive to a lot of us in the industry. Um, but once you get them in, now you say, hey, I'm noticing that with these machine translations, we're not seeing the engagement metrics that we wanted when we started this project together. Maybe we should XYZ. You offer them another product. And you're pulling them further and further down into the funnel of your little microcosm, your little company inside a company. So really, this is a big mindset shift, I think, for a lot of us who are used to people just bringing us projects and us complete packaging it up and handing it back to them. This is a very different way of thinking about the way that we work and how we interact with other people in the company.
So what I'm getting from all of this conversation, which I wish we had a couple of hours, ideally 3 hours for the very first
I
meeting,
know.
go over everything, but in order to be successful in a situation where our impact as localization specialists can go way beyond just localization, we need to
Yeah.
adopt a mindset of somebody who thinks way beyond their department. And it comes in all the forms. What you have mentioned so far is you want to be proactive about your positioning versus reactive in accepting the problems of other people and finding ways to solve them. No, you need to tell them
Hmm.
have a problem and that you have a
Yeah.
solution. You need to shift towards this mentality where any stakeholder in your company is your customer. I personally find that this also helps a lot, even in some emotional moments, because when
Mm.
your customer doesn't understand something that you care about, when your customer doesn't understand your internal processes, or honestly sometimes doesn't care about your internal processes,
Hmm.
you take it as personally and you look for solutions. How do I make them
Yeah.
happy in a way that still allows me to follow my processes efficiently? If we apply the same
Yeah.
mindset in communicating with our stakeholders and then we push them through this funnel, that
Hmm.
sounds like an immediate win-win for everyone involved. I would love to ask so many more questions that I have prepared for you, but unfortunately, I cannot keep you all to myself, Hilary. We do have a number of questions that are sent to us by
Yes.
our audience. And folks, if you have some more questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function and we will answer them. So, let me start and read out some of these questions, Hilary, and I hope that you have very good answers for them, just as you
I'll
have for
try.
Yes. So Angela here is saying that it has been a pleasure listening to you, and he has a couple of additional questions. Does Spotify intentionally adopt different brand personalities across languages, or is the goal always to maintain a single global voice?
I actually am probably not the best person to answer that question from a Spotify perspective. But yeah, I won't guess on it.
Okay, it's okay
I'm
because Angela has
sorry.
two questions just in case you would struggle with the first one. So let's
Okay, second
start.
one. Let's go for the second one.
How does localization work when meaning is conveyed not only through text, but through images, memes, cultural references? How do you ensure cultural nuance with the use of AI?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I think a lot of people are referring to this as cultural relevance. And in like AI speak, trying to pull up the word in my mind. Maybe adherence might be the dimension that they talk about. You're going to hear them talking about dimensions within AI world. Um, and so adherence would be like if I, let's say, let's say I am translating I can't use a Spotify example. I gotta come up with a different one. Ugh. Let's say I'm translating, um, let's go with what I used earlier, search results. So, and in the search results, I want to make sure that what I'm showing people is what they searched for. Right? So let's say I work at like a photo company and people can download photos, kind of like Shutterstock or Getty Images or something like that. And they're searching for cats, and I want to show them cats, right? When they search. So this is a very basic form of what you're asking, where the translated word for cat, so probably we would translate the metadata attached to the picture. So someone uploaded the picture and they said fluffy, cute, cat. Um, I don't know, some other metadata when they uploaded it or when our machine uploaded it. And then that was translated, probably machine translated. And how do you know that the machine translations actually match the image, right? Is it even accurate? There's a few ways that you can go about this. First, there is a lot of research happening right now in AI around how to make sure that context is included in AI translations. Reach out to me afterwards and I can share some nerdy studies about this that I've been reading. But definitely what you want to do is and that's what they call adherence. So is it adhering to the guidelines and the context that you provided? Yes or no? So you would want to have some kind of cultural relevance check. So depending on the type of content, you could do this through some sampling, like you could pull out random samples and have data annotators or linguists check and see if it's adhering to the guidance. But you can also use like real world metrics. So you could say, like, if they searched for cat, did they click on anything? Or did they then immediately search for uh, I don't know. What's another word for cat? I don't know the word for cat. Tiger. I don't know. I should have picked a better example in the beginning. Because if they didn't click on anything and then they searched tiger, it means we didn't show them cats.
Mhm.
They were like, I didn't get what I wanted, right? So there's sometimes like other ways that you can see that you can assess. Like if you're a stakeholder, obviously we would prefer on the localization side that we do proper quality checks and that we ensure that things that are translated by LLMs are culturally relevant. This is important. And we're going to do this by properly training the LLM, by maybe not even allowing or encouraging certain types of content to be translated by an LLM. But if it is translated by an LLM, you want to ensure that there is some context that's being included and that this is being done through context adherence. And then you want to follow up on actual metrics that show was it culturally relevant or not? Were people engaging or with it or not? Because maybe you, as the localization expert, said, guys, this isn't going to go well. This content is not going to be culturally relevant when translated by AI. And they did it anyways. You can follow up with them and ask for the engagement metrics and say, how did it go? I want to see if we can help you assess AI translated content like this in the future so that you can be successful, that you can have even more engagement. And you might see that it didn't go well. They didn't have the engagement they wanted. So hopefully I'm helping you spurn ideas for your specific use case, but these are the ways that I would think about this.
So, Hilary, what you're suggesting to me is once again, go and talk to people in other departments, go and talk to your
Yes.
stakeholders and care about the metrics that they care about. It's it's
Yes.
interesting. It's almost like we asked Angelo to ask this question so that you could
We
can
didn't. We didn't.
they
We don't
absolutely
know
did.
each other.
We don't. We don't. We do have, oh my God, there are more and more questions.
Okay,
Well,
I'll go faster this time.
we'll need to be fast. So
Okay.
Julie here is interested from a business impact perspective, where should a localization team sit within a tech organization to maximize reach and influence? Should it be in product? Should it be in marketing? Should it be somewhere else? And does this ideal placement vary by the company?
That is a loaded question. Um, I have worked in companies where it's set in all different places. Obviously, I enjoy the more technical aspects. So I really love when I can be connected to product because it's just my personal preference. But I think that you can be successful in any part of the company. Um, Different. I would look at if you are the person in charge of making this decision or influencing this decision, a few things I would look into. One is like revenue flow, because some parts of the business receive more money than others in certain businesses. And so it's probably good if you can position yourself with a part of the business that doesn't struggle to get headcount and revenue. And that's going to vary by business because some businesses invest more in product or marketing, et cetera. And so that's a strategic move that I would investigate. I would also say increasingly we're connected to content generation in general. Like, and so that's an area that you could investigate, like how important is new content generation to this company? If it's really key in us continuing to grow, then maybe wherever that sits is an important place for us to sit. But maybe another part of the business is key to growth. Maybe it's new product areas. Maybe it's, which might mean the key metrics are like pulling in new users, or maybe it's engage like new, I don't know, see what the metrics are that are important to the company success, which part of the company owns that piece, and how can you connect your work to that part of the company? That would be my investigation.
Lovely. And we're back to finding out what matters to other people and speaking their. Oh my God. Let me give another question to you. So many. So Sue is saying, thank you, Hilary, for sharing all these fantastic insights. Sue, we all share what you're saying here. As you mentioned, our industry has become more technical. As a localization professional, how do you ensure you stay up to date with the latest technologies in the AI era? Thank you.
So it's really overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people in our industry because there's just so much happening all the time with AI. And so I understand. I also think that there's a lot, I hear a lot from people in our industry that they already feel behind. They feel like they have to learn how to code. That a lot of us like maybe went into humanities or linguistics because we felt or we told ourselves that we weren't good at math, that we weren't good at science. And so it feels really scary. And I understand that. Um, but again, your expertise is actually perfect for this era of AI. And so, what I would do is I would lean into the pieces of AI that are important to leverage your specific expertise. So, multilingual LLMs, for example, how do they work? Where are they successful? Do some searches. I mean, I have my own Substack, which of course I'm going to plug, and I write about this stuff. Um, but there's a lot of people out there producing really great content on multilingual LLMs and how they work. I would also look into things like taxonomy. I would look into things like how to make sure that an LLM uses references context. Like you can start with some Google searches and start reading up on this, maybe running some tests if you have the ability to do that. And all of that requires, so if we back up a step, first saying, like removing the fear that you can't do it, that you're behind, that you're not technical enough, like let go of that fear because you actually have a lot of knowledge already that people who are building these products are trying to get. And so you're kind of like, even though maybe they're ahead of you over here, you're way ahead of them over here. And so know that you're not too far behind yet. You have a lot of knowledge. It's important. And then I would say look into areas that are adjacent, that are closest to localization, like evaluations, different frameworks for evaluating LLM content, how multilingual LLMs work, these kinds of things that are close to localization work.
Thank you. And we have time for one last question, which
Okay.
is coming from Benjamin. Benjamin is asking, any tips for communicating expectations of big AI projects or tool implementations to leadership? I feel, especially with ambitious AI projects, it's really hard to project quality output and success upfront before testing. Do you have experience with getting testing budget approved without promising success in very early stages?
This is a really good question. Is it written in here? Because I want to actually like look at it because it's a
Uh,
longer question.
yeah, so actually, Benjamin was kind enough to also share it in the chat, so you can look at it
Okay,
as
I
an.
see it. Because I want to make sure I address your different questions, Benjamin. So, especially with ambitious AI projects, it's hard to project quality output and success up front before testing. Do you need to project quality output? So, are they asking you first? Are they saying, like, I need a guarantee of the quality? Um, what I would say is, because if they are, I mean, there's plenty of information available online and through actually a lot of the large LSPs in our industry around like the general quality of the output of different LLMs for different languages and content types. So you could look that up and share it with them. A few different companies have produced content. You can always message me on LinkedIn afterwards and I can like point you to some resources. Um, but I would say that it's important to be upfront, like I said, if you can share with them some metrics of the quality expectations. And then talk to them about iterative testing. So if you can't present them with testing metrics before for their specific use case, then say, how about we start running some content through, or we run a percentage of content through, and then we do some sampling or test, or work with some data curators or some linguists to see what the quality was, and what the threshold is that we're comfortable with, that you're comfortable with as a stakeholder coming to me. Like maybe you care more about the content being relevant, like it's saying cats, than you care about it being spelled properly, right? Because quality also is a loaded term. So I would say focus on iterative testing. So trying to iterate versus needing a metric that says for sure that the quality is going to meet a certain number. Because even those of us at really big companies, that's hard to get. Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't give you a great answer, but
No, no, I think it's very insightful. Benjamin did share additional information here, saying that he works on documentation for a SaaS tool, and the budget is high, quite high, even the entry level to implement. I think that
mm,
what we're sharing here, the two key points of let's define what quality means for us, because indeed in
hmm
organization, this is so different depending on the use case. In some cases, just as you
yes,
said, relevance is more important. In other cases,
yeah,
the let's say fluency is more important if we're talking about the most basic. And in some
hmm
cases, everything is fine as long as they got the terminology just right. So aligning on the success metrics and finding the ways to iterate, understanding what is this primary metric that you get and moving on from there. And with that, we only have 1 minute left, and I'm sure that our audience, just as me, are very sad to be parting ways with you, Hilary. So we would like to make sure that we can find you afterwards and you can share a little bit more of your wisdom and experience with us. So, how do we find you online?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I also have a Substack. I have a free tier of my Substack and a paid tier. The paid tier is just because I truly spend like half of every Sunday writing for my Substack, and so that's why there's a paid tier. But I do share a lot of content on the free tier as well, where I'm just like writing about what I'm learning, the things that I'm reading, how I'm figuring out problems right now. So either of those two platforms are great places to connect with me.
Lovely. I'll make sure that I connect on all of these platforms with you. Folks, make sure that you do the same. And Hilary, thank you again so much for finding the time and for sharing all of these amazing insights. And thank you to our dear audience for being so engaged, participating so much, sending us all these questions. I feel like I learned so much today, and we actually discussed some of these topics before, and I still feel like I learned more today. So
Oh, cool.
thank you, everyone. We'll make sure to follow up with the recording of this presentation, of this webinar. Let's stay in touch. I wish everyone a very good day. Thank you and goodbye.
Yeah, thank you.